Welcome to the Frank Ammons Show. The Frank Ammons Show. Your number one source for entrepreneurs to learn, earn, and create wealth.
A mindset. Comfort is the enemy of success. It is the killer of dreams. You are enough. It's got to include the result you want. The best part of your life is right on the other side of hard times. When they ask you what do you do for a living, you're going to say, I do whatever it takes. You got to keep going. You got to keep fighting. I'm going to step in my moment. We started from the very beginning saying, hey, let's do this. Only it's going to serve other people, but serve us.
And now, here's your host, Frank Ammons.
What's going on, guys? We are back again. Today is, what's today? Tuesday? Wednesday? Today's Tuesday.
Today is Tuesday.
It's a great day. That's how I don't even know what day.
Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday?
It's Wednesday, that night.
This week is flying already. Like, we are in the middle of the week. Super Bowl Sunday this Sunday. I don't know what you guys are planning on this weekend, but so far we have a good week. We did a show yesterday, and we got a show today. We got a show tomorrow. Daniel's been hooking up with some great guests on our show. We have another great guest today, right?
We do. We have a guest. His name is Ron Watt. He is the CEO and founder of a great company. They work in PR and marketing. They've worked with many Fortune 500 businesses. And he's just got some great people in his portfolio.
Awesome. So we get to talk marketing and PR today with an expert, and that is awesome. So let's go ahead, without further ado, bring on the man himself, Mr. Ron Watt. What's going on, Ron?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, man. Glad to have you on the show. Let me fix my camera a little bit so everybody can see my pretty face a little bit. But thank you for jumping on the show, man, and telling us a little bit about what you do. And
sure.
Let's go ahead and dive into how you got started, who you are, what's your company, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, I actually got started when I was 11 years old. My dad had an agency, and I wanted to buy a car for when I was 16. So he's like, the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you work. So he put me to work as an office boy in his agency, and I immediately caught the bug of the fast-paced aura of being in a PR agency. And so ultimately, I started working for his company, and then I went to some major companies in Frankfurt, New York City, Cleveland, Ohio. And in 2003, I formed my own business called Watt & Company, and we primarily focus on servicing Fortune 500s. However, we are starting to offer our services to the smaller business space.
Awesome. So are you finding that there's more of a need, more and more for the smaller business and more of the mom and pop type operations?
Yeah, basically what we're finding is that a lot of the mom and pop and smaller businesses simply don't know where to start when it comes to PR and marketing. And PR can seem like a very intimidating thing. And so what we're trying to do is help people understand first and foremost what it is, and to let them know that they can do it. They can even do it on their own. And that's one of the things that's great.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit before we get too much into that. So 11 years old, man. So you're in the office, I mean, that sounds like some labor laws were being broken back then, but we'll give them a pass. It looks like you did okay.
I did okay. I remember how much I got paid. I got paid $3.18 an hour, which was minimum wage back in 1988.
Okay.
And I worked there for about 4 years, and I had saved enough money for a down payment on a car. So I got what I wanted.
Yeah, what kind of car did you get?
It was a Nissan Pathfinder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you learn the most, or what did you take the most from doing that experience from the get that really caused you to do what you do today?
from the get-go, I realized how passionate people are about PR and specifically a component of public relations, which is called media relations or publicity. And I got exposed to a bunch of professionals in big companies at an early age, and it basically consumed me. And I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the PR business. I told my dad when I was 11 that I would form my own agency and I would put him out of business. Um, but, but that didn't
You
happen.
told
I
your
ended
dad
up,
you put him out of business. That's pretty
yeah,
challenging.
Well, that didn't end up happening. I ended up joining his business. And then,
If you can't beat him, you got to join him, right?
yeah, right.
You guys must have a very competitive family like we do. Yeah, if you're going to
Yeah,
tell your dad, I'm going to take you out and put you out of business.
that's right.
That's pretty awesome, though. So, what was
Yeah.
it? You said that it consumed you. What was it
Yeah,
about PR that consumed you? What was it in that space that
I,
actually made you want to do it?
I honestly, it's the understated power of it all. There is a power to PR that is unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire life. If you end up getting a positive article or you end up getting a positive radio show exposure or a podcast or a television, let's say you're on CNN for a couple minutes, the power of that happening and how it trickles down to actual sales is unbelievable. Richard Branson, the famous entrepreneur, said that he would take a publicity article any day over the week over a one-page ad. And Bill Gates said if he was down to his last dollar, he would spend it on PR.
Wow. So PR has a power, as you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Talk about what can you give some examples of the effect and the power of PR?
Yeah. So let me just give one example. We were working for it's a household name, but I won't name it.
Right.
They were introducing at the Consumer Electronics Show electric vehicle charging stations. And this was the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And what we did was we lined up a bunch of different interviews with different media, and we launched that product with the media, and the power of the placements, which means the actual landing of the stories, fueled tons of orders. So they actually cannot keep up with the orders because there was so much hype and buzz that was built around it that we helped build.
So you lined up interviews with media outlets,
Right.
and because of that, and those stories coming out because of that, it created a buzz, and then the orders now are stacked up to the point where they can't even keep up.
They can't keep up. They're 6 months behind.
Wow. Now, what gives you, Ron, the skill to set that up? I mean, is it being able to contact or having the contacts of these media outlets? What is the skill that you have that allows you to do that where, people like us, we don't have that skill? What is?
It's a really good question. And honestly, the skill comes from a lot of failure and experience in the business.
I love that.
When I was started as a young chap, 23, 24 years old, we were launching Sony PlayStation in Europe, and we were working for BMW. And one of the things that I noticed that when I was pitching people or pitching the media was that I needed to develop a rapport. And immediately developing a rapport means that it needs to be story driven, such as introducing, or not introducing, but citing one of the past articles that they've already written, and then working with them to write an article about your product or service. So as far as the skill set goes, it's just a natural confidence of dealing with the media and knowing what the media wants. There's a lot of unfortunate, just because you think you have a story doesn't mean you have a story. That you need to really flesh it out and understand what the media wants. And you need to do a lot of different research and analysis to understand what the media needs and wants.
Wow. So this is interesting. Can you give an example of when you thought you had a story, but it wasn't really a story, and that was a failure you learned from?
Yeah, let's see. This was back when I was probably in my 20s. There was a story. We were working for a company that was, well, it was called AirTouch Cellular at the time, which later became a mobile wireless device carrier. I think that was bought by AT&T. At any rate, I thought that I had a story about how it was their coverage. They were coming out with a new smartphone, which was at the time in 1997 was way ahead of its time. And it was a cool story, but I positioned it wrong. I just sent out a press release, and I would follow up with people and say, "Hey, did you get my press release?
Mm,
Wanted to see if you want to do a story." That's not the way you handle it. That's not the way. I fell flat on my face.
mm,
Instead, what I should have done is say, listen, the future is coming out in a couple of days. You're going to see what's called, they're going to be start calling these smartphones, and it's going to revolutionize the way that you you work and live. I didn't do that. I
mm.
just followed up on a press release, and that was not the right way to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I don't know if you can name it, but what's been one of the biggest wins that you've had in PR with one of your clients?
I can name it. Are you familiar with the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah.
Okay. When the Cleveland Browns lost their team in 1999, um, there was an opportunity where we had to bring the team back to Cleveland. And so what we had to do was we had to work with legislators, and we had to work with the owners at the time, which was Al Lerner and Carmen Policy, and they wanted to bring the team back. And I've got a story to say is that the one of the ownership bidding teams that wanted to bid on the NFL to bring or to bid on the team to bring the team back to Cleveland, they didn't follow our advice. Our advice was, listen, make friends with the NFL. If you make friends with the NFL, you're going to end up being a leg up on getting the team. They didn't follow our advice, and we didn't get the business. So, but instead, we ended up getting the business from the team, the ownership team that ended up buying the team and bringing the Cleveland Browns back to Cleveland. And
Mm,
what we did was we set up a press conference, and it was called the most important press conference in Cleveland sports history. We brought in a bunch of different people who could help um, tell this story of how this was the best ownership team. So we compared to making friends with the NFL and doing the media relations and for creating positive stories, we ultimately ended up getting the football team and bringing the football team back to Cleveland, Ohio.
that's awesome. So it sounds like you sound like I'm not sure if when y'all did that story that you said it was called the most important press conference in Cleveland Browns his sports history.
Right.
Was that something that the public knew that it was called, or is that something you pitched only to the media outlets to get them to come cover it?
We pitched to the media outlets. I was a younger guy at the time. I was probably only 26 years old, but I'll never forget. As soon as the media alert went out to the media alert is simply a who, what, where, when, how of a press conference. And so the press conference was set up, and I remember getting calls from the New York Times, Sports Illustrated, um, boy, you name it, we got calls. And my job was to pitch them on that this was the best team, the best ownership team to bring the team back to Cleveland and have a success. Of course, 20 years later, we didn't have success,
Yeah,
but it was it was called the most important um, by this was actually by the one of the reporters, sports reporters in Cleveland. It was called the most important press conference in Cleveland sports history.
wow, wow. So okay, so that's pretty awesome. And so let's talk about someone who's absolute. Well, let's do this first. What again? Let me ask you this: if someone gets some, some promotion, if they get on TV, if they like you mentioned CNN, if you get it, even what a 10-second thing or a
Yeah.
30-second deal, what have you seen it do to someone? I know you mentioned the company that had, now they're in back order.
Mhm.
What have you seen it do for someone just as a person that went
Yeah.
from nobody to somebody, like literally what seemed to be overnight because of PR?
Yeah. Well, it does two things. Number one, without sounding corny, it changes their lives. So all of a sudden, they're a very important person in the eyes of the public and in the eyes of their industry. Um, Secondly, what it does is if they're selling a product or service, they generally get a lot of knocks on the door and new business from that placement or that story. So first off, it changes their lives. Second off, it boosts their business.
Mm, wow. Do you have a story you could share about how it changed somebody's lives, maybe without naming them, but maybe what it did for them?
Yeah, there was a situation where it was for a nonprofit, and they wanted to build awareness for cancer patients. And so we got them on CNN, and the nonprofit ended up getting bombarded with um, donations, and it ended up helping save children's lives and stuff like that. So from a PR standpoint, it felt great to do something like that for a nonprofit. But from their standpoint, their business goal was reached by doing PR, which
Yeah.
was to bring in like $1 million of donations.
And did it do that for them?
It didn't get 1 million, but it got I think 500,000.
Okay. Well, they got them a lot more than they had before, right?
Yeah, right, right.
So, hey guys, we're going to play this promo. When we're done with this, before that, we're going to ask Ron how he can help someone that's a nobody become a somebody with his services right after this. What's going on, guys? This is Frank, and I want to tell you about an exciting opportunity that you do not want to miss, especially if you've ever thought about getting into real estate investing. The time is now. Real estate is at its all-time high, and you can get in today, start flipping houses, and believe it or not, with no money and no credit. Yeah, that's true. I know that myth has been out there, but it's absolutely true. And believe it or not, it's more possible than ever today to get started and actually start making money in real estate investing. We have created with my partners a free Facebook group for you to join so you can network with other wholesalers as well as investors and get help even from us of how to get started into real estate investing. It's called Squad Up Wholesalers. That's right, Squad Up Wholesalers. You can go check it out, join it, and I promise you, one of the things you'll learn as far as getting into real estate investing is the best way to get deals done quicker is to squad up, network, team up with other wholesalers, other investors, other partners like ourselves. And we'll show you exactly how to do that. Matter of fact, if you're looking to do your first deal, join the group because we'll help you get your first deal right away. I mean, you can get your first deal this week, even today if you wanted to. It's not unrealistic. There's so many opportunities out there. You can absolutely crush it in the real estate game by flipping houses, and we'll show you exactly how to do it. Join the free Facebook group today. There's no fee. There's no upsell. It's called Squad Up Wholesalers, and let's start getting you more money in your pocket in real estate investing. You got to build your wealth sometime, and today or right now is a great time to start. So join this group, Squad Up Wholesalers. We'll see you in the group, and hopefully we'll be able to squad up and make a lot of money together in real estate investing. We'll see you there. All right, we're back, and we are with a special guest, Ron Watt, who is a PR expert, marketing expert, and he's been doing it all his life since was 11. Man, that's awesome. And before we went to the break, we wanted to, kind of tease you guys, and we want to ask Ron, how does he take someone who's a nobody and use his services to help them be of somebody? How would that work, Ron?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, there's 5 pillars to a successful PR campaign. And the first and foremost is messaging. So it's people need to understand their messaging and how they're positioning themselves in the marketplace. The second is what we call identification. And that means that you're identifying the media, you're analyzing what they've written before. The third pillar is pitching, and that's when we actually pitch the media. The fourth pillar is placement. That is the process of actually bringing up article to landing, so you actually get the placement. And then the fifth pillar is amplification. That's the fun part. Once you have a placement, you can brag about it to all your friends and family and to the world by socializing it on social media. So as far as how we can help people do that, we've got an 8-week boot camp where they can learn how to do it themselves and save close to $100,000 a year, because that's the going rate right now of a high-priced PR firm. So they can do that for a fraction of the cost. But what we do is we generally work with all different types of clients, and it's really, it has to do about what someone's business objective is. We may say PR might not be the right thing for them. It's just because people think they need PR doesn't mean that they need PR. We would give an honest assessment and say, listen, you're not ready for PR. And people might not be ready for PR if their story isn't good enough. They need a good story. It's a story-driven marketplace.
So how does somebody know if their story is good enough or not?
There's a simple test, and it's they kind of put on a hat as someone reading in the audience, and they read their story and they say to themselves, would I give a shit? Would I actually give a shit about my own story? The second test is to give it to a friend. Give it to a friend and see, do they give a shit about the story? Does it actually generate excitement for them? And if it does not generate excitement, and if it doesn't seem easy enough to tell, or it seems convoluted, then you don't need to do PR. You need to go back to the messaging phase, which is the first pillar of public relations, and really start to hone and craft your message so it plays well in the marketplace.
So just because their story doesn't read well or play well doesn't mean that they don't have a chance. It just means that they need to rework the way they're telling their story so that it's more compelling.
That's exactly right, Daniel. It doesn't mean that they don't have a story or they're not going to be successful at PR. It just means that they have not conquered the first pillar of a successful PR campaign, which we call messaging.
Yeah, so it seems like that you've been doing this for a really long time, so you have this innate ability to just kind of glance at something, without a doubt, this is something that's definitely compelling. This is going to grab the news's attention. They're really going to want to run with this, and easily see the things that are just not as compelling of a story. So if you had to, give one little nugget of advice to somebody that's, a new entrepreneur, they're just trying to make it in the market. They think they have a great story. Besides just reading it and seeing if they care or if their friends care, like what's one nugget that you can give that to really make them a success?
I would say once they test it with their friends and family, test it on the media. This isn't rocket science. PR is not rocket science. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that PR, you need to be in a certain way or mindset, or there needs to be a huge skill set. There isn't necessarily a huge skill set. There's experience, and experience can tell you whether or not you have a good story or not. But the best nugget I can say is pitch the media on your story. See what they say about it. If they say, no, we're not interested, and you'll get a lot of no's. Don't get me wrong, you'll get a lot of no's. But if they can get a yes that can lead to a story, then they'll be successful. A lot of PR and media relations and publicity is like baseball. You're pitching a pitch, and sometimes you swing at the ball and you miss. Sometimes you hit it and you connect with it and you'll get a single. Sometimes you'll get a grand slam. That might be like a CNN interview, or a single might be an interview in your local publication. And that's one piece of advice that I do. If you don't want to test it with the large media, test it with regional media. So media that's in your backyard. So that would be your local newspaper, your local television station, and pitch them and see if they're interested in it. If they're interested in it, then there's a likelihood that the bigger media would be interested in it.
So I have a good story, right? I think it's good. My friend thinks it's good. I want to move on to pitching it to the media. How do I go about like getting my foot in the door with somebody? Making that first contact. I feel like that can be, a barricade that stops some people because they just don't know how to reach out to the media.
Yeah. The first thing is, don't be afraid. Okay. The media are people too. They're humans. They are very, very, very busy, especially with the staff layoffs and the different landscape of media staffing. But what you do is you do something very simple. And this is the best advice I got, and I learned this the hard way when I was coming up. Was, you believe it or not, you tell them one simple thing, or you ask them one simple thing when you call them up, and you will need to call the media to follow up on your story. So if you're afraid of phone calls, then you're probably not going to be able to do this on your own. You're probably going to have to offshoot it to a PR firm. But the first thing you do is you get them on the phone and they say hello, and you say, "Did I catch you at a bad time?" You simply say that, because that immediately builds a rapport, because they know that you're not in it just for themselves and that you care about their time. And typically 9 times out of 10 they'll say, "I'm busy, but what do you got?" Or what you do is you call and you say, "Did I catch you at a bad time?" And they'll say, "Yeah, I'm kind of busy." And you say, "Well, do you have 15 seconds where I can tell you about my story idea?" And that's what you do. It's as simple as that. In addition to phone calls, what you end up doing is you end up sending an email and pitching them an email that tells the story angles and why the story would fit well. There's one other thing that we recommend, and it is synonymous with PR, and it's called a press release. And a press release sometimes makes sense to do or not to do. It depends on the situation. But if you prepare a press release and you send it to the media, you can follow up on the press release and ask them if they got it at the right time, and if they want to do a story about it.
So, I already kind of know a little bit of the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it for the audience. Do you have any free resources available to people that are interested in learning more so that they can, find out a little bit more about how to do this, what to do, who you are, how that maybe you can help them if they're in the right financial bracket for your help?
Yeah. So the easiest way for the small businesses to contact me is through our small business business, and that's called prmachine.co. That's prmachine.co. And on there, what we'll do is they can contact me through the chat, or they can contact me through Facebook. I'm on Ron Watt on Facebook. And we have what we call mini trainings. So we've got some free mini trainings on public relations and press release writing and stuff like that.
That's awesome. So,
Awesome stuff. And you got another one? Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. I was going to say, you have so many, top tier clients when you look at your website, people that you've worked with, both in this company and previous companies, things that you've done. If you were to go back to 2003 when you were just launching your company, right? You have this big plan, you have this idea. If you could go back and tell yourself something then that now to help you achieve what you've achieved, what would your advice for yourself be?
Boy, that's a great question. And believe it or not, I was just thinking about that the other day. And I would have told myself to think bigger. Think bigger. And that means that, if I was going to have a $1 million business, I should set my goals on $100 million business. Or if I set my goals to $100 million business, I should set it on $200 million business. If you strive for the larger goals and fall flat, then you're going to be further along than if you were to only have average goals.
Wow.
So that's a mistake that I made, but I'm correcting it.
That's some pretty powerful information right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's some good stuff, because shoot for the stars. And if you still land in the, in space there, you're still a lot further up than most people.
A lot further ahead.
Yeah. So, hey, Ron, tell us about your boot camp. What's the price point, or is there different packages, or how does that work if someone's interested in doing that?
Yeah. So the boot camp is why you need publicity, and essentially there's 5 pillars that we discuss with them, and the price point starts around $3,500. So they end up getting all of the information and all of the things that they need. We work with them, so it's a done with you situation.
Got you.
So yeah.
Now, let me ask you about your program, or even working with you. Do you guys tie it in with leveraging social media with some of the services that you offer? For example, if someone was to be able to get on a TV show, or publications or whatnot, do you have a strategy that helps them leverage that through social media and capitalize on that, maximize that kind of viewership and things like that?
Yeah, so that's the 5th pillar of our boot camp, which is called amplification. And we work with social media channels to help build that buzz. And once you have an article, you want as many people to see it as possible, or once there's a TV appearance, you want as many people to see it as possible. So we work with them to amplify that, to get it in as many faces as possible.
Yeah. Now, let's go back to working with the media, and trying to get a story sold to them, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Right now, as it stands, and I'm sure it changes. So, mm-hmm. without question, it changes. But what are they typically looking for now? What's the things that they're really interested in that you're finding right about now?
Yeah. Well, there's some evergreen things that I think that they're always looking for. They're always looking for a personal angle or an epic angle. An epic angle could be, from rags to riches, or from, like an archetype type situation of stories where it's someone who is an underdog becomes a hero. Natural personal stories really help sell a potential service or product. So if you can tell the media how it affects the general public, how your story affects the general public, whether it be saving them money or making their lives easier or helping their children, that is going to help you sell your story to the media.
So let's get into, again, you talked about, you may have to tell some people they're not ready for PR, right?
Right.
Based on their story.
Right.
So are you saying essentially, and I know this probably isn't, the details of it, but if someone has a great story that's sellable and obviously received by the media, that it doesn't necessarily mean they have to be like super experienced or a super expert in that area. They just have to have a great story that people want to talk about.
They've got to have a great story. There is a quote by Don Hewitt, and Don Hewitt was the original creator and founder of 60 Minutes, the famous television show. And he says, everything you need to learn about telling a story is you learn in 5 words you learn in kindergarten. And it's called tell me a story. So if you have a childlike view of your story, of whether or not it actually moves you, do you feel an emotion from the story, then you're likely going to have a good story.
Mm-hmm. So how important is it for people to get good at not only articulating their story, but putting it out there?
Yeah. So as far as articulating story, in the fifth pillar, or not the fifth pillar, but our fourth pillar of a successful PR campaign, which is called placement, you're going to do something. You're going to interview. When you're about to interview, you're going to have something called talking points. So you're going to set up your talking points before you actually discuss with CNN or with Fox News.
Gotcha.
You don't need to be an expert to do this. That's one of the myths about PR is that, look, I've been on this since I told you guys, since I've been 11 years old, and it's not rocket science. Okay, we're not SpaceX. What we're doing is we're ultimately telling stories, and if you can tell a story, then you can do PR.
Wow. Now you kind of gave us an inside look or a sneak peek of what it would be like talking or calling the media when you suggested, hey, do you have a quick second, or are you busy right now?
Right.
That sounded like someone who has got a name with them already, like has called them before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
what about someone who's brand new, like calls for the first time?
Right. Right.
How would that be different?
Right. So there's a myth about public relations that you need to have relationships with the media to get your stories placed. Relationships help, but this isn't the 1990s or the 80s or even the thousands when people were getting together and having a martini lunch with the media or checking up on them and stuff like that. People are so it's just a different universe, especially with the pandemic. So you don't need to have a relationship with the reporter you're calling. All you need to do is have what's called a good story. And I would recommend, even if they've never called the person before, to say, "Hi, John. You don't know me, but I have a story that I think you might be interested in. Did I catch you at a bad time?" And it's simple as that. That immediately will build rapport.
Yeah, and that's even if they didn't know you from before.
Exactly.
Got you.
Now, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
If you look at a newspaper website or, your local television news channel's website to try to find a reporter that you're going to reach out to, how do you know the reporter you're looking for? Like they have 30 people on staff. Which
Yeah.
one do you reach out to?
That's a great question. So typically what we would recommend is you go to what's called the news director. So either the news director or the news assignment editor. This is in television. So the news assignment editor, they have their meetings every single morning, and they assign the stories for the day. And so what you're going to do is you're going to call the news assignment editor and pitch the news assignment editor about your story, and then they will assign it to a particular reporter. If you don't want to talk to a news assignment editor, you can call, or you can't get through, you can call any one of the reporters that are listed and tell them, "Listen, I was wondering if you could help me out. I have a story and I'm not sure who I should speak with at your channel. Do you have 15 seconds so I can tell you my story?" What will happen is, they're human. They're not going to say no. So, I mean, sometimes they might say, "I'll call me back later," but they're not going to say no. So 9 times out of 10, what they'll do is they'll refer you to one of their colleagues who might just be a couple cubicles away, or they might put their phone down and say, "Hey, I've got a story on line 1." It's the most important thing is, do not be afraid to talk to the media. The media are not your friends. That's important to say. They're not your friends, but they are people too.
That's
Awesome.
Nice. Let's talk about your boot camp. Is that in person or is that virtual? How do you do it?
It's virtual. It's a done with you boot camp, and by the end of it, they'll have all of the tools necessary to end up getting publicity on their own. So they create what we call a PR machine. So they can create that momentum to get their own PR.
And the PR you guys really focus on is outside of internet stuff, right? Is that right? Is that right to say, or how would you?
Yeah. So the PR that we focus on is all different types. Like for instance, we're working from a small business perspective, we're currently working on a coach. We're currently working on a new cryptocurrency. We're currently working on a wellness advocate. So we do some coaching or help coaches get publicity. That's obviously a market that needs it.
Yes.
And I've noticed that they're not using publicity as they should. So
now, what's your go-to? Like, Ron, if I became a client of yours, what do you try? What's the one media outlet that you try to get all of your clients on? Because it will serve well.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, what we do is we try to create what's called social proof. So social proof is what that's so they get the logos the big logos so they can say as featured on. Yeah. And so what we'll do is we'll craft a story for them and get it out on what's called the wire. So the wire is essentially a distribution mechanism that takes the story and syndicates it to all different types of media outlets. And then from there, what we do is you can take those logos and say, as featured in Forbes, USA Today, Fox News, CNN, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the first thing that we would do with them, is to try to get that social proof. And then the second thing that we would do with them is to actually get them the stories, more in-depth stories placed with the different media outlets.
Right. So you do the wire first, and then you try to get the one-on-one type interviews and things like that. Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Now, how does someone, become more of a frequent guest? Like, you see some people that have been asked to come on and give their advice or opinion, frequently. They're not necessarily, on the show, so to speak, but they are called on consistently. How does that happen? Yeah. Is that a PR deal, or is that more of a agent deal that they've established?
The answer to that is both. So some of these are actually paid people. They're paid very little money, but they are paid to be on there consistently. Typically what we found is to be on there consistently is you need to be on top of the story. So let's say there is, I'm just going to use this as an example. Let's say there's solar panels. You're selling solar panels. Let's say there's a new legislation bill that opens up solar panels, or it'll allow federal grants for solar panels. What you want to do is you want to be on top of that story and contact your former contact at CNN or your current contact at CNN and say, hey, would you like me to sit in on and do a hit for you about this? And that's how as long as you stay on top of the news, you can be more and more of a frequent guest.
Gotcha. And that's something that you can kind of establish yourself as, and then obviously it gives you more face time.
Yeah.
So people start to see you more and more, and obviously the more coverage you have, right, can really lead to some great things. I've heard some of the effects of having a strong brand, like using PR, like you guys offer. It allows you to do a lot of things, including even charge premium prices. Is that true?
Yeah. So the big thing is, with PR comes this aura, this not a mystery, but an aura of bigness, of abundance, an aura of I'm working with someone that is important. And typically when you work with someone who's important, they charge higher prices. So people come to expect a higher prices. So let's say you're a coach and you end up getting on some of these publications or outlets, you can charge a premium price because of this. So the return on investment is quite good. You usually can get a return on investment within 3 or 4 months.
Gotcha. Now, when someone works with you guys outside of your boot camp, and I'm not sure if you take on smaller companies or whatnot, how does that work? Is that a month-to-month thing? Is that a contract, or what's the strategy long-term? Is there a long-term strategy with PR, or is this something that you use your service maybe for 6 months, a year?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have two different programs. One goes for 6 months, one goes for a year. The If they're going to work with us outside the boot camp where we're doing it for them, we recommend at least 6 months, preferably a year, where we work month to month and work on their stories, and we analyze all of the upcoming. There's something that's called editorial calendars, and almost every single publication has them. And what you do is you can assign different story topics months ahead and work and pitch the media about your particular topic that fits in, let's say in March or January or what have you. So 6 months to a year is typically the minimum.
Yeah. Now, what would you guys as service be able to offer, or I guess conclude that, let's say you got a speaker, right? You're working with a speaker, someone who is a speaker. What would you say to that person as far as strategy is concerned in order to get more speaking gigs? Now, I understand your service doesn't go book more gigs for them, so to speak, right? But
well,
it could lead to more, right?
It can lead to more gigs. For some of the Fortune 500s, we do have a speaker series program where we have to book some of the executives and speaking circuit, but that's for more of the larger companies. If you get a placement, you can use that placement into, like, let's say there is an opportunity for a speaking engagement that you want to get into. You can contact the person or the executive director of that speaking engagement and say, listen, I was just featured on CNN. Would you like to have me speak? All of a sudden, boom,
Yeah. Now, I would assume the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. If someone is about to launch a book, would you recommend PR?
Absolutely. I actually have a post on my social media about this. So if people are interested, follow me on social media. Again, it's Ron Watt on Facebook. What book PR is very, very different than regular PR. So what you have to do is you have to essentially identify who are doing the book reviews at the different publications across the country, and then pitch them on a synopsis of your book. And then that will, if they like the synopsis of your book, then they'll actually read it and give it a review.
Very good. That's awesome. Dan, you got some questions there?
Let me see what I've got. So I was looking at your website, and it looks like you have a 3-part process listed on there for when you are partnering with new customers. I know that you've mentioned a 5-pillar here on the podcast here. Is there differences between the 3 that are listed on your website and the 5-part pillar you were talking about, or is it just condensed a little bit?
It's condensed a little bit. I think the 3-part series, the 3-part that you're looking at is the strategy, or the ideation and the strategy. That's just, it's condensed a little bit. As far as the media relations goes, the actual publicity, the 5 pillars are the process that we use to actually get the final outcomes.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna do one more little promo here. When we come back, we're gonna try to get Ron to share with us a PR story maybe he's never shared before, or a funny story related to PR that he's experienced maybe with him or his client. Maybe we can get him to share something he's never shared before. We'll see right after this.
If you're ready to take your business to the next level, increase your revenue, and get more clients, go to frankammons.com and book a game-changing call with Frank himself today. What are you waiting for? Go to frankammons.com. The next level awaits you.
So, guys, we are back again with Ron Watt, and he is a PR expert. Man, he has already dropped bombs here. I'm surprised we're still alive because of all the knowledge and bombs he's dropped for us today. We're going to have you back, Ron. We're going to have you do some other things as well, maybe even team up with some of the coaches and training and things like that. We'll talk later. But before we went to the break there, we gave you a little tease. You have a story you've never shared before regards to PR that maybe you can give us exclusive on today?
Yeah. I was thinking about this, and a story that I've never told before, or at least that hasn't been told in the public. And colleagues obviously know the story, but when I was working for an agency in Frankfurt, Germany, there was a company called Tacos we were launching their essentially their restaurants, so all around Germany and Europe. And so what we did was we developed a program where we put Bienvenido with like what looked like a UFO. It was like a circular thing, and we put posters up in all the big cities. And so about a week later, the television stations started getting essentially calls from people saying that there were UFO reports, and that they had seen them in the sky. And so what ended up happening was that we pulled down the posters and we put up the new poster, and it said Bienvenido, and it was a flying sombrero. So the flying sombreros were actually, we made them to look like UFOs, and it ended up getting reported all over Europe, and it was a huge opening for Tacos.
So that was intentional.
It was all intentional. It was considered a publicity stunt.
Wow. Now, were you a part of creating that idea?
I created that idea. Yeah.
You did. Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you get the creativity to come up with something that you had to know it was going to get some kind of response like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I'm weird, man. I'm weird. So my friends would be the first to tell you I'm a weird, strange guy. So I come up with some crazy ideas.
Yeah. And that's what you get paid the big bucks to do, is come up with the weird ideas that bring attention, right? That's your game, is you got to get attention, right? Money follows attention. I've been saying this for a while, guys. You got to make some attention. Now, don't do something illegal, but do something that does get you attention. And obviously PR is a big one. Man, I promise you, this has been one of our best podcasts. Daniel, very good, man. Where'd you find this guy at? Right? Was he?
I saw a Facebook post and I was like, hey, I see you have this free thing available. I want to learn more information. And then ended up becoming a podcast guest. So it's pretty awesome.
Well, Ron, I want to link up with you myself and talk about how maybe we could work together as well. So if we have a moment or whatever after the show, real quick, if you can hang tight.
Sure.
But I appreciate you coming on and sharing all the knowledge that you've shared. Anything else you want to share with the audience? Maybe how to find you, your website, your next boot camp, anything you want to share?
Yeah. The website for the smaller businesses is prmachine.co. That's prmachine.co. And again, you can find me on Facebook under Ron, R-O-N, last name Watt, W-A-T-T.
Awesome, man. Well, again, thanks for coming on, guys. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to check out Ron on his website, prmachine.co, and join what he is doing so you can get your face, your name, your company out there and see your life literally change and be able to, help more people. That's what this is all about. Daniel, thanks for booking this guest. And guys, as always, we love you guys joining us. Don't forget to go to our website, frankammons.com. If you want to be a guest, you got some interesting story, not to take that from Ron, but interesting story. We'd love to get this out there for you. And thanks again for showing up and being a part of the Frank Ammons Show.
You've been listening to the Frank Ammons Show. Until next time, remember, Michael Jordan was the best player in the world, but didn't win a single championship until he got the right coach. Visit FrankAmmons.com and schedule a game-changing call with Frank himself and watch your business accelerate to the next level.